Alright, so StudEx should now be streaming and you can see it's picking up audio, so I think we're good to go. Huh? Oh, because the microphone right there is like green. Yeah. Huh?
Some of the student senators watching all Mr. Beast videos.
Oh my God.
Sure.
Kind of thought to see the screen from here, or was like, is there a way to like dim the light behind the screen?
I'm sure like those lights are just back there.
Yeah, because I'm like something like, can I? What, I think it's the other one.
Oh, these.
Yeah.
Ooh.
I like that.
I mean, it's easier to read the phone.
Okay.
There we go, that's it.
How does this lighting work for folks?
It's a lot better, so I can actually read it.
Okay.
Okay. Can I get a motion to begin?
No.
Okay, Angela motions, second Holly, any opposed? Okay, all in favor? Cool, all right, we are beginning. Cool, can I get a motion of the approval of the minutes?
So moved.
All right. Second Holly, all in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Great, okay, minutes are approved. Let's go to the regular agenda now. So first we have the students assembly agenda. We need to approve. You have that?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. I'm gonna yield forward.
All right, so in terms of the students assembly agenda thus far from like what we have a call to order, approval of the minutes. Our guest speaker that we currently got was Julie Murray, the chief of staff from the chancellor's office and a former StudEx chair actually. So they'll have some good experience to give to senators in that meeting. Officer reports, I know StudEx generally like wanted to decide what officer reports we'd be doing. Instead of doing like the full group, we would just do partial officer reports at each meeting. So I think I left that open so that StudEx could decide like what positions need to give an officer report at this next meeting. Part of our regular agenda is we have election for 2 vacated university senator seats. We currently have no legislation on the agenda just due to how councils went out. And so, yeah. Any questions?
Why don't we have any legislate, like, what's the point of meeting if we're not gonna vote?
Yeah.
Like, we're literally gonna get all the senators to come, to listen to Julie, who's a queen, so I get it. To listen to us talk at them.
Well, we have conversations as it relates to like legislation after this, and then we can like re-amend the agenda.
Okay.
This was just to present it to like what it is now, and so I think be perfectly fine like tabling this and moving to that next conversation if we
Okay.
want to like go towards
Sure.
legislation first. But I guess first I wanted to get the officer reports that we wanted done. But yeah, Abdullah,
Give an officer report.
huh?
Who can give an officer?
Sadie, did you have an answer for that or? Oh, I saw you moving your hand, and so I was like,
Oh, you're good. I think, right, like, you just the executive staff.
yeah, the executive staff are the only ones required to give an officer report. The others.
Just explain what happened on riots last week.
Yeah.
If that's okay, can you add that?
Yeah.
Do you need to make a motion to add it?
Huh?
Do I need to make a motion to add it?
We can make like a motion like when we get to like the final version here, but at this point we can kind of just like edit and see like where we're going. So yeah, I'll get chair. Do we want all chairs or just the rights council? Huh? All chairs?
I think that could be good. I think that could be a standing report because we feel like significant.
All right, all chairs.
Oh, yes.
Holly?
Well, a really big issue we have is people leaving early and losing quorum. And having not only the 11 executive staff plus the 3 chairs. If everybody even gets 2 minutes each, that's an extra half an hour added, you know? Like, I'm not trying to be rude in any way, but I think that's gonna bore people to tears, to be honest.
See?
So what I was kind of envisioning this because I think for officer reports, there was a lot of different routes that were tried last year, so I don't think doing every single one of them every week, I heard it's too much and people just go on, but I think I was kind of envisioning with doing a like. Every cycle, it'll be like the, like president. And then the treasurer, then the weekly, and the chief staff report every week, and then we just split the others into like half, so like half of your report minutes, and so it should be about 12 minutes. Whenever I calculated out to a minute and a half, but I'm actually giving each one a minute. And then they'll use a 30-second grace period to factor in like maximum.
I would say we don't have to give all chairs an officer report. I mean, some weeks I wouldn't be giving an officer report unless I need to clarify something or explain something. So it's not gonna be 2 minutes each unless everybody needs to talk about something, which is kind of rare. Like, I think you said that not everybody's required to give an officer report, so we won't be giving officer reports. So that's not gonna be a problem, hopefully.
I feel like it should just be shared if necessary, because it's just adding extra like time, and then we're not getting to like the actual stuff we need to do, you know?
Mhm.
That's just my opinion, and people can,
So what's your opinion?
like, for example, this week, if you need to clarify something for sure, I don't think every 2 weeks the chairs need to give a report.
Yeah.
Unless they really have something that needs to be clarified.
I agree with you.
Because I just think it's just adding extra time. And people left early last time. You know, when we run into the issue of losing forum.
Okay.
What if we just did like, made like a student thing to like, we'll be able to validate on like the bi-weekly basis, like who had actual announcements that need to be shared with the whole minute.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so like if we just like every week, it'll be a quick discussion, like, oh, I have something, okay, cool. And if not, but then if we know this 2 weeks, like remember the death, never having a meeting. Then it even also way for us to like gauge and think, okay, well, we need to check in with those in.
Yeah.
If they will still be able to effectively hold people accountable under that system. But we can like maximize.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely, especially since StudEx is the one like assigning this agenda every time, like we'll be able to come together and decide like who needs to give an officer report now this week.
Yeah, that makes.
So yeah, so is the Rights and Affairs Chair the only chair that like needs to give an update this week? I know, social justice, you're back there. Would you need to report anything or, yeah, all right.
First came
I have no clue.
I'm.
Oh, so you're Camden's proxy?
I don't think any knows. No.
We need to give an announcement.
Yes.
Yeah. that's fine.
All right. I don't know why that wants to stay at 3, but we'll get the formatting corrected later there. Anyone else that we believe would need an officer report? I'm kind of just gonna go off of this right now.
I was this, sorry, I'm sitting all this. I was thinking about it earlier today, so I swear this is all my premeditated, but it's not just like impacting that. But I think for this week, what if we just did Fabiana and Danae plus the 29 hours?
Okay,
Because
so,
I think for Gov, I think it could be helpful to explain things well in your office reports, like briefly. Even though they will only want to articulate that, I mean, I know you have a survey coming out on that. So I thought that could be helpful. That's probably.
yeah,
Not necessarily know what I mean.
It's just funny updates, you can say how much faster than our accounts. we have. Even if it's not relevant. And you just get rid of those things. And you could even send it to me like, oh, I'm not doing this big, but obviously we find out somebody else.
all right, so current officer reports, Rights and Affairs Chair, SVP, GSVP, SVVP, COS, Treasurer, GovRel, and Social Justice Director. So a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 reports.
And the limits a minute 30, so a minute 30. Okay, that's fine.
A minute if the assembly can keep it to a minute and a half.
I will say 2 sentences.
Yeah, all right. So there's our officer reports. Look good to everyone.
Yeah.
All right. And anything else that people need to add to the agenda before we get into legislative discussion here? Awesome. All right, so can I get a motion to table this to the end of the meeting? Do I have a second? Second from Angela. To table this agenda until the end of the meeting when we can add legislation or not to it.
Are we gonna revisit, is that revisiting what Holly brought up? Meeting,
Or,
even like, maybe not have this meeting, or is that a conversation we're gonna have?
We're talking about added legislation so that there's a reason to have the meeting.
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm confused, but I also outcome, so I'm not.
so like, for example, like there's legislation that was like passed in finance last week in regards to the 2 resolutions that came through. But it didn't pass social justice due to lack of quorum. And so one of the questions is to like decide whether or not we are going to like just let that legislation go through because it's time sensitive, or whether it needs to be sent back to social justice for next cycle.
Right.
They could just pass it in cycle 3.
Huh?
So they could just vote on it in cycle 3.
They could, yeah, but that's like, yeah,
That's the question, what we have to
I know,
do.
that's what I'm already.
Yeah. And then the second half of that discussion is StudEx setting the standards for quorum for like the entirety of student senate, because as we know, like we have different standards of quorum, rights has a different interpretation, as well as like, you know, exec issued a different interpretation. So StudEx is kind of what needs to establish what the joint interpretation is for the entire student senate, so that we can be lockstep on that for the remainder of the year.
A motion to move to committee of the whole.
Yeah.
I guess.
Um,
Wouldn't that be executive?
But we're, so like, I was answering questions, so are we good to table? No one objects to tabling the agenda
Why are we tabling it? Like, discussion?
to discuss like legislation? Because like the agenda is gonna be tabled, but we're gonna go into this legislative discussion and then
Okay,
have
it's not
this.
all the same discussion, but it's all.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, if we approve this as it is now, it's a pretty like small agenda, so yeah. All right, so any objections? All right, seeing none, I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to you, Sam, for this discussion.
Okay. So I have my 2 resolution, so there's the 2 resolutions that we need to talk about, right? So what I was thinking is that we just have them go through students assembly, and then cycle 3 social justice can vote on them. Since we will then have legislation to discuss, Sadie.
You don't have right to approve all amendments.
Okay,
Or no, so you don't have it right to approve all amendments.
Yeah.
And Circle doesn't have the same type of a thing in the Constitution where they have to approve all
They do.
resolutions. So what if we just pass the resolutions to do that every time? And then
That's the question.
yeah, and then would that be if students passed the legislation here, and like I said, like yes, the time and fairness, so maybe we want to vote it on the full Senate. Which like you think that so Jeff would be comfortable not hearing the resolution and passing in like debating in the full Senate? Because the vote. Since like last week was so true, or do you think it's the first session was like, we really want to have that with like input in it. Not just. I think a lot of things passed the theory that should be disclosed nicely.
Turner and then Abdullah.
Are these resolutions time sensitive?
Not really.
In my opinion, I think we should just move into, let them go through social justice next cycle. And then not bring everyone in the same setting, just to pass to time, non-time sensitive resolutions. That's my.
Abdullah.
If the resolution is time sensitive, I'm fine with that, but otherwise I would warn against StudEx passing stuff because we want students to vote on this, not just executive members. These are the powers that are given to those councils, and this procedure is only for time sensitive legislation. So we should not use that process.
Sadie
So I'm the same opinion as Turner.
or Holly.
I agree that it is not time sensitive. Are these the two, can you explain to everybody number one, what the resolutions are?
Oh,
Just the names of them, so like. I think I know what they are, but I just want to double check.
yeah, it's a legislation. It's on the ledge tracker. It's just the ones on e-scooter.
They used to one and then the closed ones.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You could pull them up on the website.
Okay.
you don't need to pull them up, like I've read them, I just wanted to double check which ones they were, because we're referring, we're not really stating the name, but the other thing I just wanted to say is like. I agree that we shouldn't take the rights away from councils, but also at the same time, what happens if it goes back to councils and forum isn't made here? Like at that time, would StudEx be okay voting on it? Because I feel like if it happens once, it's fine. If it happens again, then I think we should reevaluate whether it's time sensitive or not. You can't just keep pushing things when people aren't showing up.
Angela?
So I'm glad Holly kind of specified, or I guess we all, you and Holly specified like what the bills were, because like e-scooters, I would agree, isn't time sensitive, but the COVID one, like that is something that like regularly and actively is impacting students. And I kind of invite you to like share that story of the student who like reached out to you so that everybody had context about that bill and like where it was coming from.
Yeah.
Because I would argue that that one is worthy of more discussion and attention presently.
Bill?
I think that the quorum for all the councils might change. This is not something that I'm saying for sure, but when I talked to the student body presidents, and there was a problem with the quorum process in cycle 2, and quorums might change. That's just what I'm saying. So they'll go down, most likely. If that happens, then you won't face a problem with people not coming and then not even quorum.
Thank you for clarifying. Can we listen to what like Angela brought up, like the reason why you wrote that legislation? Because I don't know that, and I think that's probably important for us all to know.
Oh, I mean, a student came to me and wrote essentially a very long email writing about how their roommate got COVID and then they could not find any place to quarantine or like self-isolate or anything because KU has removed the option to do so. Like last year they had Mason Hall and stuff. But this year there's just like no option. I also kind of wrote that bill as well, just out of like I feel like even though I know like the president said yesterday COVID is over, I don't know how that true that is. I don't agree with that really, but because there's lots of people that are still immunocompromised, and even then there's other communicable diseases that are going around that sometimes I think you should have the option to find a place. There's empty rooms, but yeah.
You're living out in apartments too, have to sleep on the floor.
Oh yeah, they had to sleep on like a concrete floor in their like friend's dorm to not catch COVID, basically. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that to me is time sensitive.
yeah, I'd agree.
So
Okay. So
I don't know what the motion is, but motion to be the resolution 2023-301 on the agenda for consent, but not 2023 dash.
second,
cool. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, the motion passes. Do that.
Resolution 301.
Yeah.
300.
It'll be in words.
Just so you know. Say these words. Yeah, actually, you're right. You're. Scooter to the top of my.
Is it SB
It's,
That's,
dash?
or no, it's Senate resolution.
That's all right.
R 301. 2023-301.
yeah, damn.
Cool. Okay,
Oh, 301.
thank you. Too soon. Thank you, Sadie. All right, appreciate it.
Wait, what's how do I?
This again.
I think you have the whole of executive summary as well.
Oh, yeah, and second.
I'm just doing this because organization, but we're committee of the whole because it's just us, so it's easier to. Okay.
So we're moving this to full Senate, but it didn't pass rights, so is it gonna go to rights next cycle? And
This is a resolution, not an amendment. So it doesn't have to pass it.
does it have to pass? anything else?
They pass finance, so if it passes students and it passes finance,
Just has to pass.
well, it has to pass people, students can work as a council, like we are a council.
If we do legislation time sensitive. it's a-
So we're like acting as a.
Are we discussing quorum? See?
Okay.
Oh, are we discussing the quorum now?
Yeah, we should, because other like legislation could be added depending like on the definition of quorum.
Okay,
shifting,
cool.
Because it's like a decision as to whether like the voting records from this Sunday will be applied.
Okay. Do you want me to pull up the Constitution?
Yeah, that should work.
And then it would be under. Angela,
Can we get an update on what happened in rights yesterday?
yeah, what's going on?
It might be more helpful if like you explain your interpretation and then like see that started.
Yeah. You want to get started from here?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So Rights held a special session on Sunday. And in that special session, 6 members attended. That was our forum based on what I'm going to explain later. And then we passed all the legislation. It was overdue from cycle 2 because as you saw the student body vice president email, all that legislation was uncertified and therefore did not pass the cycle 2. So that is why we held that special session. As for the quorum, I think it was on Tuesday that I received, I think it was either Tuesday or Monday that I received an email from the student body vice president, in which he outlined a new list of members for the Rights and Affairs Council, and that changed our quorum, got up to, I think, 9, great. And so new members who did not attend 2 consecutive sessions were able to vote in the Rights and Affairs Council, which was untraditional to student-centered rules. Because I discussed that with Rights and Affairs Council former chair, Wes Pitney, and he said that this is not how the Rights and Affairs Council operated in the past. And then I discussed that with student body president, and she said that this is not how she managed her council in the past. So that is why we ignored that list, because we determined that the list of people who are supposed to show up at the meeting is different from the list of people who are voting members.
Yeah.
How you become a voting member in councils is that you're supposed to attend the first meeting, and you automatically have voting rights. Or you can attend 2 consecutive meetings later and then you gain voting rights.
Yeah.
And if you are absent for 2 consecutive meetings, then you lose your voting rights. Senators do not have a special treatment, as far as I have inquired. Now, I think the Constitution is not too clear about that, but this is how the rules were enforced in the past. I don't think the rules should be enforced in a different way, even if there was a clause suggesting that. Yeah, so that is what happens. Do you have any questions?
Okay, so I just want to clarify. So basically, you got a list from Alessia, from student body vice president, or from somebody, you got a list, and it was like the senators that said they were more interested in rights council over others.
Yeah,
But they didn't necessarily, that they might have attended, but it was the second session, the second council. And so they were voting when really they shouldn't have been because they never came to the first meeting.
yeah, because I asked Alessia what the list was.
Yeah, this was
And
where,
Alessia at the time said, this list will change your quorum, so now your quorum will go up. So I asked her what the quorum was, and she said it was 9, I think. I'm not
Yeah, on
mistaken.
Wednesday it was time.
Yeah,
this might be helpful for me to just explain like what the interpretation was on this side here.
Yeah, that was.
Before we get that explanation, I just want to make sure that you, is there anything further that you have in terms of your explanation?
sorry.
Is there anything further that you want to articulate before us yet?
I mean, I think I briefly explained what happened, but if you have any questions, I'm very happy to answer. I just want to say that this, what we determined was not just me, I also talked to the vice chair and I informed the other council executive members, and I asked the former chair, and that's how we came up with that decision.
Okay, cool.
All right, and so on my end here, it was an interpretation because part of like my role under the Constitution is that I need to make sure that like all of like the legislative responsibilities of the legislative branch are fulfilled as president of the Students' Assembly. And so part of that is making sure that senators are attending councils.
Yeah.
And so that list was to affiliate all student senators with a student council as is like legislatively required. And part of that also comes from the fact that like senators affirmed that they became part of those councils by not answering the email and saying that they wanted to switch councils. And so in that way, these senators affiliated themselves by 6 p.m. before Wednesday with the student councils that they were assigned, whether that be social justice, finance, or student rights and affairs. And in terms of like my interpretation, I would see these in under section 1 as modifying clauses that modify like what any student means. And so like, as you see at the beginning here, it says that any student at KU is eligible to be a voting member of a student council and that previous attendance shall not be required for speaking, and voting rights shall only be extended until the second consecutive meeting in attendance. However, there are things that like modify that requirement, like in the example that it says all student senators shall be a voting member of a student council. That articulates that every single student senator should be a member of at least one of the student councils. And in this case, the student council that they accepted under their assignment the other week. And under like the same interpretation, we would, as president, grad president, vice president, chief of staff, and treasurer, also count as like any student under that definition. But we're modified positionally because we're not allowed to have like voting rights in those councils. And we may have speaking rights, but yeah, we aren't able to gain voting rights after attending 2 consecutive meetings like other people. And so you see like these modifying clauses have like a profound effect and actually don't follow like the second consecutive meeting rule, because it does like deny or give people voting rights on the basis of what is modified by their position.
So just point number 1 needs to be edited then? Is that what we're saying? Like, I'm confused.
I think we have to decide on the implementation of the students.
Yeah.
Because I guess my question is, I read point number 1 is, as any student senator, if they show up for council, they automatically have voting rights. So now we're saying, but rights is interpreted it as if it's the first meeting of the year, yes, but if not, then they need to go to 2 meetings before they can vote.
I mean, Abdullah could clarify that.
Can you want to clarify, like to?
Well, I think I said it the way that you said it earlier.
Well, yeah, that's what Alessia is suggesting by this clause. But if that was the case, then anybody who shows up at the council who is a senator can vote, and that is problematic because the quorum will be fluctuating every time.
That's what I'm
And you
saying.
don't know what your quorum is.
Yeah.
Now that does not happen in the history of Senate, as far as I've known, as far as I've asked people who have been in the Senate. How you gain voting rights is you show up to the first meeting or you show up for 2 consecutive meetings. Otherwise, we would not have any stable quorum, and then we would not be able to conduct business. You know, we had this problem with social justice, and now that's why we're passing the resolution, because of what happens.
Oh, yeah. Plus. No, you're good. Sorry, Willa. You're speaking.
So, can I ask another question?
Yeah,
I'm trying to clarify this in my mind, but I might be being very slow because I really don't feel well, but what I'm trying to clarify is, are we trying to decide whether student senators should have a vote to any time
Yeah.
to show up to or not?
so yeah, so under like StudEx's authority, and I can just like glide over to that real quickly.
Because what makes a senator more important than a regular student that isn't a senator that goes to a council? I don't think.
I guess that they're an elected representative.
Yeah, I get that, but like, we've had so many vacancies, it's not really that difficult to become a senator.
Yeah,
And so I don't necessarily feel like it's fair to give senators more rights than another student that's dedicated to a council that isn't a senator or doesn't want to be involved in the Senate or wants to be involved in the council.
yeah. So in terms of like our function here, we're supposed to make sure that like all activities are carried out in accordance with the Constitution. However, like we interpret it, it's going to be like the interpretation we set for the entire student senate.
Yeah, I don't.
And then if like that needs to be challenged, folks can challenge the StudEx interpretation in the constitutional court. And so basically what we would sort of be interpreting here in this case.
Well, I think in my mind, I think we need to edit the Constitution because to me it's. If we're going the way that I like, my mode of thinking, I don't know if everybody else is thinking that way, but then this is unclear to me.
Yeah. So like the interpretations that we have here are basically that if we want to go by the interpretation that like this, any student that is eligible to be a voting member, previous attendance shall not be required and a voting right shall only be extended until the second consecutive meeting in attendance. Then we're going to be saying that anyone under here who is like modified by this clause won't actually be modified. And so like all student senators shall be voting members of a student council will only apply on like the second consecutive meeting, but also members of the president's cabinet that are currently not allowed voting rights in student councils would be gaining voting rights under this interpretation.
Well, they just used to have voting rights.
Or, yes,
Just delete the first clause. That's it. All of our problems are gone.
I mean, I wish we could delete it here, but we can't.
Yeah, we can make the bill and we can have it deleted next cycle. If that works.
I don't find the deleting of the first clause necessary. We agree on the interpretation. I think when we linguistically it's vague, and there's like two interpretations.
Yeah.
And so I really don't find it necessary to remove that clause on the StudEx agreed on an interpretation. And not saying that like it shouldn't be deleted any further, but I think we could address it in this cycle, this moment effectively. I do think it definitely leaves room up to like either interpretation during the clause. I don't think it one of these interpretations is correct. I think we just need to go.
Yeah.
Handle.
I'm very confused by the second sentence, starting with previous attendance. If you read it out loud, previous attendance shall not be required for speaking and voting rights, shall only be extended until the second consecutive meeting in attendance.
There should be a comma.
That's
Yeah.
Shall not be required.
Previous sentence shall be applied, comma, speaking of voting rights.
Okay, that makes sense.
But it says until the consecutive second
Yeah, that
meeting
was-
instead of like by the second consecutive.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so can I make a motion then?
Is everyone clear?
Yeah, do we have like the clear options here or I
I need
guess a
Somebody
billing?
to break it
Okay, I would like to make a motion to keep the rules as they are, treat senators the same as every other member of the university, that is every other student. This is how we have enforced the rules in the past, and this is how we enforce the rules now.
Oh, I was gonna clarify the two options here as
Oh,
well.
you go ahead.
Could I do it to neutral party?
Huh?
Could I do it as like a related party?
Oh, yeah, no, that works.
Can I ask a question? So if we went with the motion that was mentioned by the vice chair. That means that, for example, if I went to rights next week, I would have voting rights because I went last week.
Yeah, because you wouldn't be modified anymore. So even though it says we shouldn't have voting rights, we would now be able to gain voting rights.
And I guess my question to the vice chair and to,
Huh?
And for under the motion, under the.
yeah, I'm happy with motion, but I want to ask a question to the chairs or the people that are representing me here today. Are you okay with that? Because like, that means that like, those of us in leadership positions, if we show up to council, we get a voting, we get right to vote.
That is not my motion. My motion is not that.
Okay.
My motion is to keep the rules as they were in the past, which I just explained at the beginning of the meeting.
Okay. But unless you said
Those
that if we
numbers
go
here.
that way, then all of these clauses start.
No, it's just 1.1.
Well, no, like technically because it's saying that like these can be modified. Then it like would mean that like those clauses would once again be subject to interpretation because if all student senators shall be voting members is tied to the first preceding part of the section, then every other thing under here is going to be tied to the first preceding part of the section.
Which is
I
fine.
don't follow the logic, I'm not gonna lie to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very.
I don't.
All we're doing. Because
So-
maybe it's even different.
So basically,
Yeah.
what Alessia is saying.
Yeah, different thing.
There's like these 6 clauses are attached to that, like first bit. So if we say that one of them doesn't apply, all of them don't. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, because you're saying, so basically section 1 is like as it is right now, because these clauses here modify the voting and speaking rights of like every member. And like also deals with if a member has 2 consecutive absences or may decide to attend a different. But like under the interpretation, what we would be sort of switching is that actually the top part of section 1 is the important part. And that essentially all student members shall be a voting member of a student council when they join that council. And that members of the president's cabinet who wouldn't have speaking and voting rights would be able to gain those rights because they're not barred under this part anymore. Because we're still categorized as any student.
I think that I disagree with that, and I think that underneath the list, being listed underneath, I think it's clear that it outlines further the like restrictions. And so in my mind, it reads more as an exception than like a contradiction to that end. Like for me, I think for me, it reads more as an exception. And even without saying this is an exception to the rule and does that. I don't think it alters the meaning.
But that's the thing, like every one of these is an exception to the rule.
Right, so I think if you delete the
Yeah.
first one, the second one isn't dependent on the first, but we prioritize the primary definition. And so even if we don't delete it, I know it's a different amendment, but if we say like this first one, what matters, like any student anywhere is eligible, I don't think anyone's debating the clarity of the second. Like the second is very clear about like I'm just pointing out second for example, like I think it's clear that the members of the president's cabinet shall speaking voting rights in city councils with the exception of the president, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I think that like the interpretation by interpreting the primary one over the 1.1, I don't think it decreases the clarity of 1.2. I think that the only conflict within the 1.1 through 1.6 is within the first clause. So I think that us deciding that the previous method of quorum is like the interpretation of this constitution, I don't think it nullifies the rest.
The thing is though, like it does like have like just the same amount of clarity that all student senators shall be voting members of a student council.
I disagree with a student council, and it doesn't outline the processes by which they're assigned or anything like that. Whereas on 2.1.2 doesn't have any other additional steps, it's just that these cannot vote in council.
Ability, it's Lindsay.
Yeah, it does say, 1.7, it does say that they're voting members, but it also says here, if a member has more than 2 consecutive unexcused absences, they should lose current voting status in this council. They're voting members, they're not permanent voting members. They're just like everybody. So that's what it means.
But the
Actually, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just that we're interpreting this in either this way or that way.
So I do have a question because like, would that count as just like the student voting member or other voting members as well? Because like, is it just modifying like a regular student member or is it modifying senators and cabinet members as well?
Talking about,
Like, what's our interpretation of the word member on the point?
well, it should be a voting member.
Question.
That's what it should be, not just a member. Well, I mean, that's what it's referring to, obviously. It's not referring to somebody who doesn't have voting rights, because that wouldn't make sense. It's just referring to somebody who has a voting right in the council, but if they don't come in 2 times, then they don't have a voting right anymore. If you don't have a voting right in the first place, then this doesn't matter to you. Holly?
I'm gonna bring up something that I don't know, maybe controversial. I know StudEx has the authority to decide this, but I feel like considering how much conflict is coming up, maybe there should be something that the assembly discusses as a whole. Because I feel like I'm the only graduate student here, and I know we only have like 5 graduate student senators, but like I think their opinion matters too. And I feel like we have the right as a council to interpret this, but I think we should understand how the assembly would want to interpret this too. And because there's like so many conflicting ideas on what each thing means, I think there could be conflicting ideas of senators' interpretation too. And so if we brought this as a conversation to the student assembly, I think that would be fairer for everybody.
Bill,
I think this is how the rules have been. And this is how we have enforced them throughout the years. If somebody wants to change the rules, they should just make a bill. There's already a legislative process for that. We shouldn't be creating new processes to do things and just use the old processes.
I'll point out that the Constitution was rewritten last semester, so I mean, like, precedent doesn't really apply. It's like, it does say point blank, all student senators shall be voting members of the student council. I mean, the amendment's fine, I like, that's, you know, and I think we're discussing that when we send those.
I just think it's not really fair to like, sorry to you, but.
Was this pulled from the SRR, or was this rewritten?
This one was rewritten. Because yeah, it was originally like they didn't really have a generalized clause for speaking and voting rights, and so this was added in.
I think we need to come up with them.
Okay,
Even when that wasn't the SSRR, this is how councils operated throughout the spring and the fall. Student senators did not get special rights ever in the student senate until cycle 2 on Wednesday. That's when it happened for the first time. So even though you're saying that this SSRR is new, it hasn't been enforced.
well, that's a lapse of.
I guess, I completely understand what you're saying. And I don't think I think most people would agree with your like feeling that we should do it the way it's been done because that's what everybody's used to. And I don't disagree with that because I think that's right. But I think that because of the way it's written here and because it can be argued in a different way, that's why we need to make an amendment and bring it to the student assembly, because otherwise it's really vague and things can keep changing and keep causing problems in the future.
City,
What if we just introduced a full senate on Wednesday, we just introduced like a committee for whole legislation?
Yeah, I think.
But not we, but like if rights, if you wanted to introduce, like, I could be the making call this today, I think should be able to copy it. Like, if, what if like a bill was introduced in committee for whole this Wednesday, and then like 2 full senate, and then if they voted on it, to clarify this language. And then if we move to use mention on the agenda, then councils, right, another one. And then we that's right.
Well, that would take at least 3 weeks.
Well,
Yes.
well, then it would give you like, you know what we did for revision we tried to do for the rising force bill where like it went through one council and it went through the StudEx and to full senate and back to rights.
It still hasn't been decided upon because we don't have.
Right.
Fully functioning councils because of this.
No.
So it's just gonna take months. We're not gonna get done with this in a semester. So why are we changing the rules? Or just within the rules? I don't understand. This is pretty weird. If you want to change the rules, you have to write a new bill. That's how it works.
Austin, do you have something to say?
I would just say that we have to make sure that our levels of enforcement, how we're going to enforce this forwards, going forward would be important because, as the bill pointed out, these have been the rules that have been newly modified, so there's no start of seasons when it comes to this document. However, it's important to make sure that the document and what it does say is going to be enforced.
Exactly.
So that might be something to outline.
And that's what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say like, everybody, like, we're talking about this now, but Joe Block, senator who just joined, probably has no clue what's going on, you know, and we need to have the whole student assembly understand what's going on, why it's an issue and why it needs to be changed. Not just us that are in leadership roles in some kind of a way, which is why I personally think it should go to the student assembly to get everybody's opinion.
Bill?
I would like to make a motion to keep the rules as they have been previously, just as I explained. That would be until there is a bill that replaces those rules right here.
All right.
You can't exactly have a timeline.
What?
You can't exactly have like a timeline. Yeah, like that would be for like legislation, like we would be establishing an interpretation, but as soon as it's changed legislatively anyway, that interpretation's out.
So then we don't even need this.
Yeah, we don't have the sunset clause. But yeah, I would say, like, from my side though, like, I think that in like the interpretation as it is like currently, like having student senators affiliated with a student council as like they were is like incredibly important because we've seen how engagement has gone over these past few years and like not having them affiliated with the student council and having like these elected representatives heard in these councils, I think is like critically important to like deal with the students.
You can have the students affiliated with council, you just can't give them special rights just because they're student senators. That's our only concern, because that quorum number will just keep going down, going up, and you'll never know what we're doing. That's what happened in social justice, and now we can't pass anything over there.
But it isn't, like, in my mind, it is not a special right, because these student senators, like, unlike what we have in like councils, these senators were elected by the student body.
So
So serve as part of the legislative process.
what would happen to our quorum if somebody next Wednesday decided to come in, then the other Wednesday they decide to switch to another council, and then who decides? Who
I mean,
switches? to
that's
which
their right
council?
in the Constitution. If we go
Who
to,
assigns senators? These are all processes that we would have to figure out if we're gonna change
Okay.
the rules.
I'm gonna stop interrupting each other. Like decorum. No, like be adults, okay. So Alessia,
I was gonna say, like, we look at the responsibility of the senators, which I believe is Article 6 of this.
Okay,
Could you like scroll up?
yeah. Where?
It's Article 6.
Okay,
And
thank you.
So like student council membership is like a responsibility that they're required to become a member of one of these councils and attend meetings. And that they must send this information relating to membership and any updates to the Director of Internal Affairs. And so like this was the process that was followed the other night when student senators were assigned, they were told what council they were assigned to, and they were told that they have the ability to change their affiliation at any time. Because that's like what's here, like if senator like wants to change their affiliation, they want to go through the Director of Internal Affairs. And so this is already present in the Constitution in terms of like senators and what they need to do to amend their council membership. And so yes, senators as it stands currently can amend their membership to any council as it stands currently. And so I think that voting rights should follow.
Bill,
This article there outlines the responsibilities of a senator, not the rights of a senator. Just because a senator should attend a council, it doesn't mean that a senator should have a vote in a council. I see that the student executive members, the cabinet members, they attend the assembly, but that doesn't mean that they have voting rights to the assembly, even though it's part of their responsibilities to attend the assembly. And Alessia outlined that in the last meeting. I asked her, yeah, what's our attendance requirement here? And she said if somebody doesn't attend the assembly, then they will be, punished by HR. But that doesn't mean they can vote. Just because it's your responsibility doesn't mean you have a right to vote.
Colin,
I think we should make a motion to vote on this because I feel like we're going around in circles. but,
Yeah.
I would like to make a motion, and anybody can object to it, so I feel uncomfortable with it, that we should bring this to the student assembly, going to committee of the whole,
Well, sorry.
not necessarily going to committee of the whole, sorry, but at least have the student assembly like know what's going on and have their opinion.
Alessia,
So I was gonna say, like, the students assembly, like, StudEx specifically is like given the like function to interpret this. And
No,
so,
I know we are, but like, we're not in agreement.
yeah,
And that's what I'm saying. If we were in agreement, it makes sense, but we're not in agreement, therefore it needs to go to the assembly to, have everybody's voices heard. If we were in agreement, then probably the majority of the assembly would be in agreement, but we're just going around in circles right now.
but
I want to hear from the other chairs.
Yeah.
Like Joseph and then also representative of finance, because I think it's clear where right stands, but I think at the end of the day, we're exec.
Yeah.
And chairs with vote and not like leadership of the council, so we're gonna enforce this policy. And so I want to hear from the perspectives of the two chairs who haven't spoken.
who'd like to go
Also,
first?
Okay.
Awesome.
Fine. I would say, I think this clause needs some clarification because, Abdullah is correct, with the fact that, the interpretation of a member is very vague here. Is it a voting member? Is it a participating member? And that's a potential loophole later on in the later clauses that modify the responsibilities of the senator. That claim that, well, is that membership exclusive to participating within councils? Because a council is defined by any council under this interpretation, which is linguistically vague. So one could, in theory, not that one would necessarily do this, but this has been empirically a problem, but they could shift from, rotating councils, and that would, at least above on the first clause, be totally permissible because their membership in the council is their attendance.
Yeah.
So I think we should fix that.
So I have a question. Does finance think that the rules should stand as they were in the past? Is that what I'm getting here?
I think that I guess the short answer would be no. I think that we should clarify in draft legislation with students assembly input that essentially would clarify this language to ensure that it's not up to precedent of action, but more precedent of the Constitution and what is delineated in the document.
So you're in favor of bringing it forward in front of the assembly? Okay, just have it.
They should have some type of leeway, because like. It's not like where we can put it in on your meeting. You should also have that. Like, yeah.
Does anyone like want to make a motion then that brings to the, okay,
I'll just like sort of point of information as well, like this also like whatever like. Interpretation we pick also depends on like other legislation that we would be reviewing, so. Right voted on legislation yesterday in their special session. And we would only be able to accept that special legislation and like bring it into the assembly if rights interpretation is agreed to, because the quorum they had is less than the quorum of the other interpretation. And so like the vote that we make right now, whether to do rights interpretation or the interpretation listed by like exec, it's going to be like determining like what legislation we vote on at this assembly meeting.
okay, Sadie?
Motion to accept quorum, like in this, I took that quorum as was defined by the respective chairs in the past council meeting and bring this matter to the full Senate.
Can I get a second? Cool, Angela? Oh, sorry.
Could you clarify that?
Basically, it would be all legislation that was passed based off of the individual interpretation of quorum by the councils. So it's like rights passed legislation on Sunday based on their understanding of quorum, which is different from execs. So to reconcile those, just accept quorum as it was defined in the councils for the past cycle, that legislation is still valid, and then we determine it moving forward on Wednesday. There's like, it's a forward meetings, that way we don't affect anything that happened in the past. But it's just like moving forward, we'll go with this definition based upon the like discussion and consensus on Wednesday. We can call a special session of StudEx at some point, and then just affirm that.
I get what you're saying, but I guess my question is. Isn't that like unfair to social justice if we pass legislation because of a quorum issue, but then another council could because we're given them leeway, but we didn't give a different council leeway?
I think no matter which way we go is unfair. And I think that at this point, we are where we are, and so I think we just do the best of what we have right now. Which is like, we have a council who had 2 sessions last week. And so I think that we just recognize the work, recognize and all that stuff, and then just moving forward, we figure it out Wednesday, and then from there on, we'll be more streamlined.
Bill?
Social justice can still have a special session, just like rights did, and that would fix the problem too, just approaching it the same way. Because I don't think that the quorum that we had on Wednesday is really legitimate. We did not have any of that discussion. It was just, we had lists thrown out at us, and that's what we used for a quorum, and that was not right. If the rules are going to change, they should be changed through procedure. Whether it's the procedure within StudEx or within the Constitution or within the Constitutional Court or whatever, but not just us determining quorum and meetings spontaneously like this.
I think we should.
See.
Yeah, so we should be voting.
Okay, so does everybody understand Sadie's motion? Okay, Bill?
Are we giving power to the assembly to determine this? Is that what the motion is?
We're getting their feedback, and then StudEx is still permanent, but it's taking it to full thing. So it's not like
So that's just the motion that we're taking to full sense so they can get, so we can get.
we can get
Okay.
more voices.
Wait, so we don't have an interpretation then?
The interpretation is everything as it stands. What's under question right now is not full sense. Quorum is fine this Wednesday. We can define council quorum as it applies to council, which is what's up in the air right now.
But this does. Yes.
So I'd say it's saying keeping the quorum as we historically knew it, just for the period in between, and so that the legislation can still go through.
Exactly.
So that the quorum was legitimate on Sunday.
I think it doesn't need to be this difficult. I really think that we've been going on in circles for a long time about something that is materially unimportant. I think that this is a problem in Senate, where we run in circles about things that don't matter. In this, right now, we had a council that they met a quorum that we have historically used present. I think that's fine. We need to decide what quorum is. We can get feedback from we have a life cycle. We can get feedback on Wednesday. I think that's fine. I think that's good. And then we can regather as StudEx and interpret. But I think that in this space, you're being unproductive because there's so many different opinions. I think having some space, some additional opinions could help in the decision-making process and make it more equitable.
Okay, let's vote. All in favor?
Well, what hap-
Wait,
like, this isn't a good way to vote on something that's challenging by this time.
well, the motion was already there to vote.
Yeah, I know, but like, not everyone might say aye. So.
Right, okay, well, we can do a clicker
I'll
vote.
say all of that.
Okay, well,
Because I
we
came
can,
with the interpret, well, I mean, I made the interpretation, so.
well, let's just do a poll then, a critical. Fine. Is it forms?
Is everyone really to do your voting member or not? Do you feel confident in that? I know it's still early, so it's okay. You can
Just a
vote.
question, okay.
What should,
Thank you.
You
You
can vote.
all four in this block.
should I just,
Turner, your
what should I name the resolution?
Huh?
What should I name the resolution?
Forum question to students. Assembly. We want to get that. The forum question.
Bill,
And keeping the rules for the councils currently. Because that's what the first part of the motion was.
keeping,
I don't think currently, because technically the current rules are what was stated Wednesday.
Sadie?
it's it's uphold voting as defined by, or uphold forum as defined by councils until a uniform definition is heard and later affirmed by students. It's good. It's not perfect, it doesn't need to be perfect.
I don't know if we have that authority though.
It's okay. We can, students can set the definition. I think we're comfortable in that. I really think we're getting nitpicky as a StudEx, and I think that if there's consensus upon
There should be
understanding what that
abstain
means,
as
I
well.
think it's fine.
Thank you, Sam. Appreciate it.
And then also move question to assembly. For discussion, we're not doing them. But people are welcome to bring in them to the committee level. Okay, I'm sending this out.
Amazing.
Right,
Ah,
giving everybody like a minute.
Do we have all 9 voting members? I think we do. I know, there'll be Angela and Denise for, so I think we do have everyone actually.
Who's the ninth?
What exactly is it about science strategy? Zachary,
No,
I'm not a voting member. I vote in tie breaking only.
the only reason Angela and Denise are voting members, aside from Fabiana being one, is that they have StudEx membership.
but we're missing one vote. That should be nine.
Austin, did you vote?
Yeah,
So you did you want? Yeah.
You're a voting member.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was second.
Yeah.
Okay, we got 9, by 7 to 2, this passes, so we're gonna do that.
So does that mean that all the legislation rights are will go on to the assembly?
Yeah, we should be able to, so that would be basically all 3 of them. Or did rights amend any but the third one?
We passed resolution 1, 2, 3, and 4. That's what we.
Wait, but one was failed.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I mean,
One
we
was-
voted on 1, 2.
Was two was passed. as written.
Yeah, but 3 was amended.
3 was amended, and then 4 was passed as written. Yeah, okay,
Is it HR 2023?
so yeah, it would just be Senate Bill 2023-2. That go, or -3, sorry. Yeah,
There's other ones passed too, though, right?
yeah, but
Yeah, but
they
they
were
were
passed by
already
assembly, and since Wright passed them with no amendments, that means they're ready for Sadie to sign.
That's it.
Yep.
Cool. And then discussion of form rules.
I have another question.
Yeah.
So the advisory boards didn't pass, right?
Yeah,
So what does that mean?
it means that all advisory boards that were in that legislation are now null and void. And so like any representation that was like allocated to them is no longer applicable.
But what does it mean for like moving forward?
Oh.
Instead of redo it, is it like what we're doing?
Well, let me show you what currently we have for that.
It just might be good for us all to know what's going on.
Yeah, so now that that legislation isn't in effect, we'll be going in what's currently in the Constitution, which is the Campus Fee Advisory Board.
Okay.
And so, oh, forgot, it's an exec. Yeah, so instead of being its own like separate board, now it's under exec for like fee research and stuff like that. And so,
So we're not gonna try and resubmit that legislation then?
well, even if we do, it's out of effect now. So like all the representatives that were appointed at other councils, in this case, just finance council, will no longer be representatives
Right.
per this Sunday. So this becomes the new, so instead of having all of our advisory boards as it was, we now only have one advisory board. And it's going to meet with the following members. And now instead of appointing chairs, the president is now going to be able to appoint one student advocate that will seek feedback for like some of the fees. And so instead of having like a council that's like chosen by exec and legislative and like assembly, we're now just having like the campus fee advisory board, which is going to be chosen entirely almost by exec and or directors.
See,
Can you scroll up so I can?
I am planning on, I talked to some people about this, campaign, I'll put it up. I'm gonna be bringing a bill in for next cycle about advisory boards, about instituting a similar format as the one that was already proposed, except I'm going to address the concern for about Florida Rights Council within it, and hopefully have a conversation in advance, like in the creation of that, to make sure that it will hopefully be passed in cycle 3. So hopefully it'll be for the next few weeks. My plan of action for those, is we have some individuals outlined, I know there's appointments, and so I don't know material is on the advisory board process to do this. It's not until, but that's my plan. I know you asked me something to reintroduce it. Yeah, I'm gonna reintroduce it, but amended, not amended, like it'll be a whole new bill. And the advisory boards, it'll be a very similar structure, but the holes and the problems and problematic areas that Rights addressed and have questions over will hopefully be addressed and resolved in advance.
Well, and are you just gonna like work with like creating like a dual authorship with Abdullah then to work that out?
That would be totally fine. I would do that. If something doesn't work, I can delegate
Yeah.
somebody for that, but.
I can do you can do me and then we can find someone to finance it, or someone from my
I'm good now, right? Anyone have any questions in regards to the current campus fee advisory board? Yeah.
What is it to have a new be investment pass?
If that bill doesn't pass, then we'll have no advisory board, so I'm
I'm confident.
confident it will.
Cameron, what was the situation? Was it a verdict reached on whether or not Rights had met quorum during their last meeting? Because they've been in the finance council, they did not. I'm curious what the consensus here is.
Sadie, do you want to explain your motion?
Yeah, I made a motion that just passed, it was a 7-2, it was basically to accept quorum as defined by the councils in the previous cycle, and then you're going to have a discussion in both in it to establish a Senate-wide understanding interpretation of it. That'll be one piece of this. Again, that's the motion.
great. Can we get
We
a-
discussed, I guess, like the Halloween meeting and then the agenda.
Oh, yeah, okay, so on a way lighter note, Halloween, so I have a meeting scheduled still for that Friday, because I didn't know if people were gonna be going on Halloween on Mondays, but I think it's probably most people are gonna be doing stuff on that Friday night. So are we all good with what?
Stage for that.
Well, right now it's scheduled like this, the 28th. So that's, yeah, StudEx that week, but if we want to do the 31st and then keep the Mondays, if that works for everybody instead,
Yeah, we should just keep it on the Mondays, because otherwise it's confusing.
cool. I just didn't know if people had Halloween plans like on Halloween.
It's only
or-
4 to 5, isn't it? So I don't think
It's only 4 to 5:10, but yeah.
Okay.
4 to whenever. but, so,
Yeah, so.
yeah. Okay, then let's just do Monday, Halloween.
Yeah.
Cool.
we
I'll
can
wear-
have costumes.
We should wear costumes. Yeah, we'll do that. It'll be fun. Okay. Do I have anything else?
Attendance tracker,
Okay.
because we do need to call a special session.
So there's a number of senators that haven't shown up enough. We were thinking about calling a special session next Monday. I don't know if we should to remove them from their positions because they've not met the attendance guidelines. There's a number of senators that have like made it to one. Can you explain the yellow, red, and green?
Oh, yeah, I guess I'll speak on this. Okay, so green means they attended, red means they did not attend, and they had an unexcused absence, yellow means they had an excused absence. And then you just give the top names, councils.
Okay.
So we're gonna have a StudEx special session to remove these senators.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, under the current like attendance regulations, they're allowed like 2 unexcused absences or 3 absences of any kind. And so that's gonna be like what we're sort of like debating by this Monday here.
That is legislation that's not passed. We amended the legislation and it should pass through the assembly on Wednesday, but it's not passed yet.
Well, no, it's interim agenda legislation, so it's been in effect until it does pass or fail.
Okay.
Yeah, otherwise, we would have like attendance regulations, that it would be like if you missed one meeting, then we could call StudEx to bar a senator.
Sadie?
Can we do it online next Monday? So we don't do probably the third meeting?
Yeah. Sounds good.
Are we looking for
James.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's just do it teams.
Are we looking for motion?
Yeah, turn, yeah.
So I'm totally for removal of senators, but what's the process for quorum and stuff like that? If we have like a extreme decrease. in
Because it's cool, but down.
That's-
Yeah, quorum only works with like the voting members that we have, and so if senators are like removed, then it would lower our quorum. And basically only focus on the senators that are attending.
Okay, that's fair. And also, do we have a plan to fill all these spots in place before we take all?
We do have the replacement senator form of them.
Yeah, and I've gotten a number of responses, so
Okay.
there's still like, I need to send that out, I guess, tonight or tomorrow night, but tomorrow morning. But yeah,
And then, I guess just to explain like how the process will go, if senators, so like we would need to notify senators 5 days in advance of the special meeting. And so if StudEx decides that we're going to like go for the special meeting on Monday, then we're gonna be able to notify all senators that are like delinquent in attendance. And they will have the ability, if they want to come defend themselves, then it'll basically be like a court proceeding. They'll have 5 minutes to explain, the chief of staff will have 5 minutes to explain, and then they both have 2 minutes for closing arguments. However, if they don't come to the meeting, then StudEx can like make a decision based on just the chief of staff's like word in regards to this. And or we can also offer them in an email the option to resign instead of coming to that meeting.
Would we have interest in doing that after assembly next Wednesday? Just because it's gonna be a shorter meeting, it's to students after that, and people should already be there.
We wouldn't have like time because it needs to be like 5 days in advance to the person being like removed.
So they need to like notify this other. So if we do it on Teams, then it should be a lot. Maybe a lot. However. Well, What does the black mean on there?
Oh, that means they weren't a senator at the time.
Okay. That's why I thought.
So I guess I'll just like motion to have a special session next Monday by Microsoft Teams from 4 to 5.
Second.
Cool. Okay. All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? All right, we'll do that then next week for Teams.
Right,
Can I get-
good, then.
All right, can I get a second? Second, all right, all in favor? Any opposed? See you all next week.
Oh, no,
See you all Wednesday.
Wednesday.
See you all Wednesday.
I'll let you talk. I'm not well. Trying to feel.
All right, thank you to everyone who's